what we want to look at is a key achievement or two when it comes to BATT over the last 25 years. Is there anything in particular that stands out?
As it launched in 1997, by the early 2000s, 2001, I believe, in that sort of timeline. And I just want to call out Peter Julie, who you saw giving those kudos, the past CEO of RBTT. Thank you very much for those comments. He was the actual founding president of the Bankers Association. Glad he could be on to the program. But in 2001, we would have had the formation of the Code of Banking Practice. A key thing that, in forming an association, you do want to set standards. We want to describe what we consider good practice, good service, what we will be able to do, and more importantly, not be able to do. Sometimes persons think that the banks can come together and talk about rates and price and charges. Those things are not part of the association. It is really an advocacy association, lobbying, key aspects of it, education building as well. So Code of Banking Practice was a critical one, 2001 thereabouts. During that period, some of you may know the Links network, that we all use that network for our debit card to access money at the ATM or to pay for our goods at the point of sale devices. That Links network, we sometimes call it a Links card, but really it's referred to more formally as a debit card, is what you use, and there's a infrastructure behind it, there's a company behind it that ensures that the proper operating of that infrastructure, ensuring that we are compliant, that we're using the best and latest technology, and that company is called Infolink Services Limited. Through the formation of that was really by the four major banks at the time, larger banks, Republic, Scotia, First Citizens, and RBC, continue to oversee that aspect of it. Within there are two other key initiatives that has happened. It was the formation of our credit bureau. And the credit bureau, CRSL, Caribbean Reporting, I'm testing myself here now, Caribbean Reporting Services Limited, was formed with the partnership of TransUnion. Just several years later, and in the mid-2000s, I believe, somewhere thereabouts. And what we saw that was allowing for us to really be able to share credit information across banks. So this allowed us to be more confident, both for the consumer in terms of being able to more quickly assess and offer them loans, be it a loan for a property or a loan for a vehicle, or just a loan for other buying of furniture or other aspects, so to speak. So that we saw the lobbying of that. More recently, in the last several years, we have seen the formation of what we call the ACH, Automated Clearinghouse is the official name. That's really where we are now allowed to transfer funds between banks outside of our ATM. So I can pay my insurance through ACH, either at my bank, or that funds can be transferred to another local bank. A lot of that background and infrastructure is now used through a lot of the digital means that the banks are offering. So as an example, at RBC, you can transfer funds to the local banks, and there's a limit by which you can do so. So these funds are easily able to move around without you having to write a check or to go into the branch to do so, really making it more convenient for the consumer to get their day-to-day banking done, leaving the more complex transactions for that visit towards the branch when you need to do so. And last but not least, one of the more upcoming initiatives will be that of the electronic check clearing. What it's really looking at is taking the checks that we write and digitizing it so that we can transfer those checks in the background between member banks. This will be another foundational step that would allow for further digital aspects as we move forward. So these are some of the key things that BATT has oversight for and had oversight and responsibility for implementing over the last few years.
You've seen that sort of transitional way from queues and sanctions that you just come and line up behind.
So what you're saying is we're seeing an evolution of the in-branch experience where the customer is going to more engage with their money online, but when it comes to making those financial decisions, they're going to go inside the bank for it.
Very correct, Pauline. So what we call the more complex interactions. One of the pictures would have shown what we call a pod. Digitally, there's a couple of things we need to do. Clients, to your point, will not just gravitate digitally. So I'll talk to the pod concept, which is one, and you might see something similar like in an Apple store, where you are not over a counter and I'm behind the counter and serving you. It's actually facilitative. It's a round table, and yes, we have glass because of pandemics now. So it's to the left side there. You'd see a little computer screen with that little circular area to the left. It's really ability so we can more casually have an interaction. So these will facilitate certain transactional needs, but easily gives that sort of welcoming concept to work with the client. Right next to it, you would have seen what we call our discovery zone, because I can't in the middle, and I can't have you come into a branch, talk digital, and there's no way for me to explain and show you how to, even go onto like an iPad or your phone, to do the actual digital and have the digital experience. So we call them the discovery zone. You come in, and if you need some guidance and help, we sign you up digitally so you can learn how to be more efficient doing the digital side. And those, we call them those discovery zones in the center there, provide and facilitate that. And then lastly, to the right, it looks just like a nice TV screen, big TV screen with an area to sit with a little coffee table. That facilitates advice events. You can have clients come in at the end of the day or sessions that are less busy and actually do a little guidance around first-time home ownership, what is needed to qualify for a home or a mortgage. We can work with various colleagues across different industries and welcome them in. So you see that sort of transitional way from queues and sanctions that you just come and line up behind to go to a counter with tellers behind it to one more of an engaging, open environment, come in and have a discussion with your banker or your relationship manager.
When it comes to family business, I am positive every single person watching this knows somebody who either has a family business or works in a family business. And because it's something not so common, we don't necessarily dissect it. So if you can just give us sort of a clear definition of what a family business is.
Family businesses behave differently from their counterparts, which are non-family businesses. So, for example, we know that they want to leave a legacy behind. We know that they are managed differently, and we know that they have a different entrepreneurial spirit. They have a different way of doing things. So we know how they influence a business is that they have they may own the business, and it ought to be 100%, right? And they may express their ownership and also their influence on the business, maybe through the board of directors. So they may not be working in the business. They may be working in the business also, and they will influence the strategic direction of the business. And also a family business, a true family business, wants to continue to the next generations. So I would call that basically a working explanation of what a family business is.
No one will like to know that they've invested so much of their time and effort in building a business, a brand name, a legacy, and on their departure, it succumbs.
How does one translate that so the layman person can understand there's this risk involved? Because I find, and I saw this in a recent, I love a show called Insecure. It's on HBO. And one of the episodes was about death, and specifically Black families don't like to have that conversation because personally, I've tried to have that conversation and it's either don't worry, God will find a way, or don't worry about that. That's not for you to study. So in that same mindset and culture, how does one say, okay, listen, you need to actually not just have insurance, but you need to have a plan A, B, and C?
And you're correct. I mean, that is something, it's morose. We don't like to think about it, but it's inevitable, Pauline. And as much as we take care of ourselves and all that we can do to, at least live as long as we can, eat healthy, avoid certain, lifestyle choices, it's inevitable. So it's sometimes the elephant in the room for most family businesses. What happens after the death of the owner or the matriarch, the chief influencer or decision maker? And I think it brings or lends itself to having a conversation about continuity. So it's about having that conversation pretty early on about how do we continue with this business, not necessarily in its present form, but how do we continue a business operating when the owner or the chief influencer passes on.
Getting old is a privilege, and it really is a privilege that most of us would like to strive to.
So when it comes to in that space, why is it important for us to understand what a power of attorney is?
That's an excellent question, and I'm just going to take you up on one point in terms of powers of attorney. You find that sometimes our senior citizens or elderly persons may grant a power of attorney to a person to act on their behalf. And essentially what a power of attorney is a legal instrument which allows a person to act on another person's behalf. And the power of attorney usually sets out what is the authority the person possesses. So it would say whether the person is able to make deposits, whether the person is able to make withdrawals, whether the person is able to make investments on behalf of the elderly person. And usually it is a registered power of attorney, particularly in our jurisdiction. So why it is an issue, particularly from the banking perspective, is that it can sometimes be used as a vehicle for elder financial abuse. And sitting as the chair of the legal committee, sitting as a banker, sitting as someone who works in the banking industry and provides advice in relation to these matters, I really think it is important for us to have this type of conversation. I think that it is important for the public to be aware of the issues arising in relation to the use of powers of attorney, particularly for elders, and to really generate an environment where all persons, including our senior citizens, feel comfortable to raise an issue where they see, their power of attorney that they may have been granted to somebody else, appointing somebody else to act on their behalf, is being misused. So really and truly kudos to BATT for creating this environment and sensitizing the public.
So I actually have an example that I think your advice would be required on this one, because I know someone who was taking care of someone who has Alzheimer's, which is a very difficult disease, and the children of this person lives abroad. So they were completely managing the individual, their mother, and had to go actually pay for certain things. So what I found usually happens is there's this verbal trust that happens between the caregivers and the power of attorney. But what advice would you have for those caregivers who, just want to get the job done, but doesn't necessarily have that level of, I guess, backing or, to say, okay, this is what I've signed up for and I'm going to get my money back?
In that instance, well, you've raised an important point, particularly in relation to Alzheimer's, because it returns us to the question as to whether the elderly person is mentally capable to handle their financial affairs. And if there are any questions in relation to that, certainly in that instance, there would be a request, particularly from a banking perspective, to receive evidence confirming that the person is able to handle their financial affairs. And usually that evidence may take the form of a medical certificate from a doctor confirming that the person is medically capable of handling their financial affairs. And this is the first step that will be undertaken before any access is given to the elderly person's finances. So I'm just putting that out there in the context of your example. In the event that we're speaking about the elderly person's bank account or accessing the elderly person's bank account in terms of paying for certain things.
Is around the corner. What can we look forward to for BATT?
As I had mentioned earlier, we do have our Global Money Week, which is one of our annual events at the end of the first quarter of every year. We're hoping that it can be grander. And this time, as opposed to the last 2 years and back to when it first started, we can probably have more face-to-face interaction with the youths and the audience. Then we have, of course, our bi-monthly newsletter, which, we send out to our stakeholders. We've been doing a great job there. We also have Financial Literacy Month, which is usually in April. So we will be having some outreach to customers. Then we are doing a project called Break the Silence with UE. It's going to be launched at the end of the month, where we look at tools and ways to assist with ending child sexual violence. It's not the typical financial literacy type thing that we do, but it is an issue that we need to address and need all hands on deck. And then we will continue our work with SMEs. We are graduating a cohort of 120 SMEs from the Tobago startup program that we just did in Tobago. And we'll be continuing that program of financial literacy, business planning for SMEs in Trinidad and Tobago. So, and then of course, we have a few other initiatives with other stakeholders, the TTPS dealing with women, vulnerable women, and financial literacy for them. We've done other work with vulnerable women as well. We'll continue to do our work with youth and youth entrepreneurship. And when I say youth, this also extends down to the elementary school level as well, all standard 3 and stuff. So it's not just the teenage years, but we start as young as the mid-elementary level. And we have many other initiatives targeted towards the youth, SMEs, our stakeholders, the customers in general, that are cited for next year.
Good morning and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat.
Be realistic. right? Forget the Kardashians and these people. Be realistic.
And before we went live, I was like, now I know who the branch manager is. I'm going to walk in and be like, where's Heather? And on that note, where's Heather? Bring her in. When it comes to choosing where to save, invest, and the impact of inflation on earned interest, where can the average citizen invest that will at least beat inflation? Beating inflation. I feel like if you have the answer to that, you have like future teller.
I don't know if I answer your question again. But future
And everywhere. I remember my first girlfriend I was wearing that shirt. That was his style. I was slamming.
But to put it in Trini terms, would you rather spend your day traveling to the branch, waiting in line, or would you rather have your transaction done in a matter of minutes and then spend your time with your family or liming at your favorite place?
Shout out to Anil on YouTube. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us again this morning.
Well, I am based in Ontario, and I have spent a fair bit of time in Trinidad. Not of late, thanks to the pandemic, and I can't wait to get back because I just can't get doubles here.
Doubles all the way. Doubles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.